A woman with no friends is not just alone. She is vulnerable. Humans are social creatures, wired for connection. From the very beginning of civilization, survival depended on community, on working together, on sharing burdens and responsibilities. And while today's world doesn't require us to hunt for food in packs or build shelters with our hands, the principle remains the same. Isolation breeds weakness. When a woman has no friends, she lacks mirrors. People who reflect back at her, challenge her perspectives, and remind her of who she is when she forgets. Without those relationships, she risks losing touch with reality, becoming trapped in her own mind, unable to gauge whether her thoughts and actions are leading her towards growth or destruction. It's not just about missing out on social gatherings or deep conversations. A woman without friends is missing out on accountability. She has no one to call her out when she's slipping, no one to push her when she's capable of more. In isolation, self-doubt grows, confidence crumbles, and the world feels harsher than it actually is. When hardships arise, and they always do, she has no support system, no foundation to lean on. Loneliness is not just an emotional state. It has physical consequences. Studies show that chronic loneliness can weaken the immune system, increase stress levels, and shorten lifespan. It's as dangerous as smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. So a woman with no friends is not just missing out on companionship. She is playing a dangerous game with her health, her mind, and her future. A woman with no friends might tell herself that she's fine, that she doesn't need anyone. But that belief is often a mask for deeper pain, for a fear of rejection, for unresolved wounds that make her hesitant to open up. She might have been hurt before, betrayed, let down. But the solution is not to shut the world out, because without meaningful connections, life loses its depth, its richness, its purpose. When you isolate yourself, you silence the voices that challenge your self-destructive narratives. You become your own echo chamber, convincing yourself that your perspective is the only one that matters. But true growth doesn't happen in solitude. It happens in the exchange of ideas, in the clash of opinions, in the support of those who genuinely care about your well-being. A woman without friends is missing out on the beauty of trust. She never gets to experience the warmth of someone standing beside her, not because they have to, but because they choose to. She never experiences the growth that comes from deep conversations, from shared laughter, from lifting someone up and being lifted in return. And that absence creates a void that no success, no material wealth, no external validation can ever truly fill. She may tell herself that she's better off alone, that people are unreliable, that friendships are unnecessary. But the truth is, every great accomplishment, every moment of joy, every personal breakthrough is amplified when shared with others. No one truly thrives in isolation. The strongest, most resilient, most powerful women throughout history were never islands. They built networks, they forged alliances, they surrounded themselves with people who inspired and challenged them. A woman with no friends is missing out on a crucial part of the human experience: connection. And until she acknowledges that, until she makes the effort to let people in, she will never truly tap into her full potential. A woman with no friends may believe she is protecting herself from disappointment, betrayal, or unnecessary drama. She may convince herself that self-reliance is the ultimate form of strength, that solitude is a mark of independence. But what she fails to see is that by shutting people out, she is also shutting out opportunities for growth, healing, and transformation. Friendships aren't just about companionship. They are about sharpening each other, refining one another's perspectives, and holding each other accountable to higher standards. Without friendships, a woman lacks the necessary friction that polishes her character, the challenges that force her to evolve. She remains stuck in her own head, blind to her blind spots, unchallenged in her weaknesses, and deprived of the wisdom that comes from shared experiences. A woman without friends lives in a world where every burden is hers alone to carry. There's no one to divide the weight when life gets heavy, no one to lift her spirits when self-doubt creeps in. And the truth is, even the strongest people, even the most successful individuals lean on others. No one climbs to the top alone. No one overcomes every obstacle without a helping hand, a word of encouragement, or a reminder of their own potential from someone who believes in them. She may tell herself that she is strong because she walks alone, but true strength is not the absence of connection. True strength is found in the courage to be vulnerable, to trust, to give and receive support. Avoiding relationships out of fear is not strength, it's avoidance. And avoidance leads to stagnation, to a life spent in isolation where growth is slow and limited. A woman without friends also loses out on the wisdom that only relationships can provide. She doesn't get the chance to see life from different perspectives, to be challenged in her thinking, to be introduced to new ideas and ways of being. She risks becoming rigid in her thoughts, stuck in patterns that could have been broken had she been open to the insights of others. Human beings are not meant to go through life alone. Every major advancement in history, every groundbreaking achievement, every revolution of thought was built on collaboration, on shared effort, on the exchange of ideas. A woman without friends denies herself the very mechanism through which progress is made, not just in society, but within herself. There's also the matter of emotional resilience. Life is full of challenges, of moments that shake our confidence and test our willpower. In those moments, support is not a luxury, it is a necessity. Without friendships, a woman faces every hardship alone. She lacks the sounding board that helps process emotions, the support system that reminds her of her strength, the reassurance that she is not alone in her struggles. And let's be clear, friendships don't just serve a functional purpose. They add joy, richness, and color to life. They create memories that sustain us, laughter that heals us, moments that remind us why life is worth the effort. A woman with no friends may survive, but she will not thrive. She may function, but she will not feel truly alive. The most powerful women, the ones who leave a lasting impact, are not the ones who build walls around themselves. They are the ones who build bridges. They understand that relationships are not a sign of weakness, but a source of strength. They invest in others, not just because they need support, but because they understand that life is not meant to be lived in isolation. A woman without friends might believe she is protecting herself, but in reality, she is robbing herself of one of the greatest sources of fulfillment and resilience. She is limiting her growth, dulling her experiences, and setting herself up for an existence that is more difficult, more exhausting, and ultimately less meaningful. A woman without friends might think she is protecting herself from pain, but what she is really doing is building a prison around her own potential. She tells herself she doesn't need anyone, that she is strong enough to handle everything on her own. But strength isn't about isolation. Strength is about knowing when to stand alone and when to lean on others. What she doesn't realize is that loneliness is not just an absence of company. It's an absence of perspective, an absence of growth. When you have no one to challenge you, no one to call you out on your excuses, no one to remind you of your worth, when you start doubting yourself, you start living in an echo chamber of your own thoughts. And that can be a dangerous place to be. Without friendships, there's no accountability. No one to push you when you're slacking, no one to remind you of your goals when distractions creep in. People who think they can achieve greatness in isolation fail to understand that every successful person has had mentors, supporters, and people who believed in them when they didn't believe in themselves. The idea of the self-made woman is a myth. No one truly rises alone. A woman with no friends also loses the opportunity to practice key life skills: compassion, patience, forgiveness, and emotional intelligence. Relationships, even difficult ones, teach us how to navigate conflict, how to compromise, how to put our egos aside for the sake of something greater. When you isolate yourself, you rob yourself of the chance to develop these skills. And that means when challenges arise, you may lack the tools to handle them effectively. There's also the issue of mental and emotional well-being. Study after study has shown that people with strong social connections live longer, experience less stress, and are generally happier. Why? Because human beings are wired for connection. Our nervous systems regulate through relationships. Our stress levels decrease when we talk things through with someone who cares. Without that, the burden of life becomes heavier, and over time, it takes its toll. And let's talk about another hard truth. When you push everyone away, eventually people stop trying. At first, people may check in on you, may try to include you, may reach out even when you don't reciprocate, but over time, they stop calling, they stop inviting, they assume you don't need them, and eventually they move on. Then one day, when you finally need someone, you look around and realize there's no one left. Not because people didn't care, but because you convinced them you didn't want or need them. It's easy to say, I don't trust people, or I don't need anyone, but those statements are often rooted in fear. Fear of rejection, fear of betrayal, fear of getting hurt. And while those fears may be valid, allowing them to dictate your life will only lead to regret. Yes, people can disappoint you. Yes, some friendships will end, but that's part of the journey. You don't stop eating because you had one bad meal. You don't stop trying because you failed once. So why would you stop building relationships just because you've been hurt before? The truth is, a woman with no friends may feel in control, but she is actually depriving herself of one of the most valuable assets in life: connection. Real friendships don't make you weak. They make you strong. They push you. They challenge you. They remind you of who you are when you start forgetting. And here's the final truth. No one makes it through this life alone. The most powerful, successful, and fulfilled people all have one thing in common. They value relationships. They invest in people. They understand that life isn't just about what you achieve. It's about who you share the journey with. A woman with no friends might think she is protecting herself from disappointment, but in reality, she is cutting herself off from one of the most essential aspects of human existence: connection. People aren't just accessories to life. They are the mirrors that reflect who we truly are. Without those reflections, without that feedback, it becomes easy to lose sight of our own strengths, our own weaknesses, and our own growth. She may tell herself that being alone gives her more time to focus on herself, on her goals, on her ambitions. But what she fails to see is that true success, whether personal, professional, or emotional, is rarely achieved in isolation. The most accomplished people in the world understand the value of collaboration, mentorship, and support. Even the strongest among us need people to remind us of our potential, to help us refine our ideas, to hold us accountable when we stray off course. When a woman isolates herself, she also limits her own perspective. She sees the world only through her own eyes, her own experiences, her own biases. Friends offer different viewpoints, different life lessons, different ways of approaching problems. Without that external input, she risks becoming rigid in her thinking, unable to adapt, unable to grow. And let's not ignore the emotional toll of isolation. Human beings are social creatures. We thrive on connection. Studies have shown that people with strong social networks live longer, have lower levels of stress, and experience less depression. When a woman chooses to go through life without close friendships, she is making a choice that directly impacts her mental and emotional well-being. But maybe she tells herself that people can't be trusted. Maybe she's been betrayed before, hurt before, abandoned before. And so she puts up walls thinking they will protect her. But walls don't just keep pain out, they also keep love out, joy out, growth out. Living in emotional isolation may feel safe, but it's a safety that comes at the cost of deep fulfillment. The irony is, by trying to avoid pain, she may actually be creating more of it. Loneliness doesn't just happen when you're physically alone. It happens when you feel unseen, unheard, and disconnected from the world around you. And when you have no one to share your struggles with, no one to laugh with, no one to lean on, life starts to feel heavier than it needs to be. Even the strongest people need support. Even the most independent people need encouragement. No matter how much we pride ourselves on our ability to stand alone, the truth is, we are all better when we have people in our corner. And friendship isn't just about needing something from others. It's about giving as well. When you deny yourself friendships, you also deny others the chance to experience the wisdom, kindness, and strength you bring to the table. A woman with no friends may convince herself she is better off this way, but deep down she knows something is missing. There's a difference between choosing solitude for self-reflection and using isolation as a shield. One leads to growth, the other leads to stagnation. It takes courage to let people in, it takes strength to trust again after being hurt, but the alternative, living a life without deep, meaningful relationships, is far more dangerous. Because in the end, success, happiness, and fulfillment aren't just about what we achieve alone, they are about who we share the journey with. A woman with no friends may tell herself that she doesn't need anyone, that she is strong enough on her own, that friendships are distractions, that people are unreliable, but deep down, no matter how much she convinces herself of this, she feels the weight of solitude pressing down on her. Because no matter how independent or self-sufficient she may be, the truth remains, humans are wired for connection. The absence of friendship doesn't just mean fewer social interactions. It means a lack of emotional support, a loss of shared experiences, and an absence of the very thing that reminds us we belong in this world. A woman with no friends has no one to confide in, no one to celebrate with, no one to remind her of who she is when she starts to forget. She may see it as a badge of strength, but in reality it can become a prison of isolation. Think about it. Who holds her accountable? Who challenges her to be better? Who tells her the truth even when it's hard to hear? Without friendships, she exists in an echo chamber of her own thoughts, her own beliefs, her own insecurities. She has no external influence to guide her, to push her forward, to help her see herself through a different lens. This kind of isolation can lead to stagnation, to a life where she is simply existing instead of truly living. And let's not forget what happens when struggles arise. Life is unpredictable. Pain is inevitable. No one escapes hardship, whether it's loss, failure, rejection, or heartbreak. And when those moments come, a woman with no friends carries that burden alone. She has no one to remind her that she is strong, no one to reassure her that she will get through it, no one to provide comfort in the moments when she feels like giving up. But maybe she tells herself she doesn't want to depend on anyone, that relying on others is a sign of weakness. But true strength isn't about doing everything alone, it's about knowing when to lean on others. It's about understanding that vulnerability is not a flaw, but a necessary part of the human experience. Even the most powerful people in the world, leaders, entrepreneurs, visionaries, did not rise to success alone. They had mentors, they had supporters, they had people who believed in them when they doubted themselves. And yet, a woman with no friends denies herself that same support system. She chooses self-reliance over connection, but in doing so, she may also be choosing loneliness over fulfillment. But let's take it further. What does life look like when there is no one to share the joys with? When there is no one to witness her achievements, no one to celebrate the small victories, no one to say, "I'm proud of you." Happiness, like pain, is meant to be shared. It is amplified when it is experienced with others. A woman with no friends may accomplish great things, but what is success without someone to celebrate it with? What is joy if it is only experienced in solitude? And then there's the matter of self-perception. We do not see ourselves clearly. We are often our own harshest critics, our own worst enemies. But friends Friends remind us of our worth when we forget. They remind us of our progress when we feel stuck. They reflect back to us the best parts of ourselves that we sometimes fail to see. A woman with no friends lacks that mirror. She has no one to tell her you are enough, no one to remind her of the light she brings into the world. But perhaps she thinks friendships are too much work, that people will disappoint her, that relationships require energy she doesn't have. And yes, friendships require effort. Yes, people are imperfect, but so is she. And just as she will be disappointed by others, she too will disappoint. That is the nature of human relationships. Imperfect, messy, and yet deeply necessary. A woman with no friends may believe she is protecting herself, but in reality she is only limiting herself. She is shutting out the very thing that could help her grow, that could make her stronger, that could make her life richer and more meaningful. She may think she is fine on her own, but one day she will look back and realize that life was never meant to be lived in isolation. And by the time she understands that, she may find herself surrounded by accomplishments, by success, by everything she thought she wanted, but without anyone to share it with. A woman with no friends may walk through life with her head held high, convincing herself that solitude is a choice, that she doesn't need companionship, that people are unpredictable and unreliable, but no matter how much she rationalizes it, the absence of connection takes a toll. She may be strong, but strength doesn't mean shutting the world out. Strength doesn't mean carrying the weight of life alone. She tells herself she's different, that she's not like other women who rely on social circles, who find joy in laughter and companionship. She prides herself on her independence, but deep down, there's a void. There's an emptiness that no amount of self-sufficiency can fill, because the truth is, friendships are not just a luxury, they are a necessity. They are the foundation of a life fully lived. But let's be real. Why do some women find themselves in this position? Maybe she's been hurt before. Maybe she trusted people who betrayed her, who let her down, who walked away when she needed them most. And now she's built walls instead of bridges. She's chosen to shut people out rather than risk being hurt again. But here's what she doesn't realize. Those walls that she thinks are protecting her, they're not just keeping pain out, they're keeping love out, they're keeping growth out, they're keeping life out. Pain is inevitable, betrayal happens, people will disappoint you, but isolation is not the answer. The answer is discernment. The answer is choosing the right people, because not everyone will hurt you. Not everyone will walk away. Some people will stay. Some people will support you, love you, challenge you, and make you better, but you have to let them in. And what about the impact of isolation on her mind? She may not even notice it, but over time, loneliness rewires the brain. It makes her hyper-independent, suspicious, withdrawn. It convinces her that she's fine without anyone, but deep down, a part of her craves connection. And if she ignores that need for too long, it becomes harder and harder to open up, to trust, to let herself be vulnerable. She may pour her energy into work, into self-improvement, into goals that she believes will bring her fulfillment. But what happens when she reaches those goals? What happens when she succeeds? When she finally achieves everything she thought she wanted? She looks around and there's no one there. No one to celebrate with, no one to witness her journey. No one to remind her that success is not just about personal achievement, it's about shared moments, about impact, about leaving something behind that's bigger than yourself. But let's talk about the other side of it. Maybe she believes friendships are a distraction, that they take time, that they create drama, that they slow her down. And yes, some relationships do. Some people are toxic, manipulative, self-serving. But again, the answer is not isolation. The answer is choosing wisely. Surrounding herself with people who elevate her, who challenge her, who want to see her win, the kind of friendships that sharpen her mind, strengthen her resolve, and remind her of who she truly is. A woman with no friends may believe she is protecting herself, but in reality she is depriving herself of laughter, of memories, of the kind of moments that make life worth living. She's denying herself the warmth of understanding, the power of support, the simple joy of knowing that someone sees her, truly sees her, and cares about her well-being. And let's not forget this. Life is long and life is unpredictable. The people you surround yourself with today may be the ones who catch you when you fall tomorrow, because no matter how strong she is, no matter how much she believes she can handle everything on her own, there will come a day when she won't be able to. A moment when she needs someone. A moment when she looks around and realizes that solitude isn't strength, it's suffering. But here's the good news. It's never too late. It's never too late to break the cycle, to open up, to let people in. She can choose today to seek out meaningful connections. She can choose to invest in relationships that matter. She can choose to rewrite her story, to move from isolation to community, from self-reliance to shared strength, because life was never meant to be lived alone. And the sooner she realizes that, the richer and fuller her life will become. She wakes up every day with the mindset that she can handle it all on her own, that she doesn't need anyone, that she is better off without the complications of friendships, without the disappointments, without the betrayals. And maybe, for a while, that belief serves her. It keeps her focused, it keeps her sharp, it makes her feel invincible. But over time, the cracks begin to show. Because no matter how much she convinces herself that she's fine alone, the human heart is not wired for isolation. We are built for connection. We are built to be seen, to be heard, to be understood. And when a woman cuts herself off from those experiences, she's not just avoiding pain, she's avoiding life. She's choosing a path that, while it may seem safe, is actually robbing her of the depth and richness that relationships bring. But let's be clear, there are reasons she got to this point. Maybe she grew up in an environment where she had to be the strong one. Maybe she learned early on that vulnerability was dangerous, that the people she loved the most were also the ones who hurt her the deepest. Maybe she tried opening up before, only to be met with rejection, judgment, or abandonment. And now she carries those wounds like armor, refusing to let anyone get close enough to hurt her again. And you know what? In some ways, that makes sense. It's understandable. When you've been burned before, the instinct is to pull back, to protect yourself, to go through life with walls up so high that no one can climb them. But here's what she doesn't realize. Those walls don't just keep the bad out, they keep the good out too. They keep out the people who would support her, the people who would challenge her to be better, the people who would celebrate her wins, lift her up when she's struggling, and remind her that she is not in this alone. Because here's the truth, life is hard, and trying to carry it all alone, that's a burden no one was meant to bear. No matter how strong, how independent, how self-sufficient she is, there will come a day when she needs someone, and the saddest thing in the world is realizing you have no one to call, no one to lean on, no one who truly knows you. And let's talk about what that does to the mind. Isolation rewires the brain. It makes her believe that she is different, that she doesn't fit in, that no one would understand her even if she tried. It makes her hyper-focused on herself, her goals, her work, her ambitions. And while drive and determination are powerful, they cannot replace the need for human connection. Look at history. Look at the most successful, powerful, influential people. None of them did it alone. Every great leader, every game changer, every person who has left a mark on the world had people around them. Mentors, friends, supporters. Because strength isn't about doing it all yourself. Strength is about knowing when to lean on others. She may think that being alone makes her untouchable, but in reality, it makes her vulnerable in a different way. It makes her more susceptible to self-doubt, to burnout, to the kind of loneliness that eats away at a person's soul. And the worst part, she may not even recognize it until it's too late, until she reaches the top of the mountain and realizes there's no one there to share the view with. So what's the solution? It's not about forcing connections. It's not about surrounding herself with people just for the sake of not being alone. It's about choosing the right people. It's about taking small steps to let others in. It's about understanding that trust isn't built overnight, but it's worth building. It starts with being open, with being willing to take a risk, with understanding that, yes, some people will let you down, but some people will show up. Some people will be there. Some people will see you for who you truly are and remind you that you don't have to do it all alone. And maybe, just maybe, that realization is the beginning of something greater than she ever imagined.